We are live, live, live. All right, everybody. All right, this is Dream Giver Part 2. I may have to re-record it on TikTok because I think I pushed story not live on my TikTok, which was dumb, but that's okay. All right, so we're doing all these today. I'm just doing them in segments, okay? And I want to read you a poem by Robert Service. And this is called The Quitter. And it is something like before I read The Winner, now I'm going to read you The Quitter. I know, or, the loser, whatever you want to do. So I read you The Winner, now I'm going to read you The Quitter. And I want you to understand this before we get started with part 2 of the book, okay? So, here we go. When you're lost in the world and you're scared as a child, and death looks you bang in the eye, and you're sore as a boil and it's according to Hoyle to cock your revolver and die. But the code of the man says fight all you can, and self-delusion is bare hard. And hunger and woe, oh, it's easy to blow. It's the hell served for breakfast that's hard. You're sick of the game? Well, that's shame. You're young and you're brave and you're bright. You're hard or raw deal. You've had a raw deal. I know, but don't squeal. Back up. Do your damnedest and fight. It's the plugging away that will win you the day. So don't be a piker, old pard. Just draw on your grit. It's easy to quit. It's keeping your chin up that's hard. It's easy to cry that you're beaten and die. It's easy to crawfish and crawl. But to fight and to fight when hope's out of sight, why, that's the best game of them all. And though you come out each grueling bout all broken and beaten and scarred, just have one more try. It's dead easy to die. It's keeping on living that's hard. We all know life is hard. We all know that it's easier to take the easy path. But each time you do, you got to get back up and you got to go hard. Let me read this one more time, just in case you didn't understand what I was saying. And this is by Robert Service. But I don't want you to look at it as a negative. I want you to look at it as a positive. I want you to look at it as in, I got to get my butt back up. I got to get back out into the game, and I got to keep pushing forward. Because if I don't, there's no point. And guess what? You matter, and there is a point. So I'm going to read it slower. When you're lost in the wild, and you're scared as a child, and death looks you bang in the eye, and you're sore as a boil, it's according to Hoyle to cock your revolver and die. But the code of a man says fight all you can, and self-dissolution is barred. And hunger and woe, oh, it's easy to blow. It's the hell served for breakfast that's hard. You're sick of the game? Well, now that's a shame. You're young, and you're brave, and you're bright. You've had a raw deal. I know, but don't squeal. Buck up. Do your damnedest and fight. It's the plugging away that will win you the day. So don't be a pikerd and pard. Just draw on your grit. It's so easy to quit. It's the keeping your chin up that's hard. It's easy to cry that you're beaten and die. It's easy to crawfish and crawl. But to fight and to fight when hope's out of sight, why, that's the best game of them all. And though you come out of each grueling bout, all broken and beaten and scarred, just have one more try. It's dead easy to die. It's the keeping on living that's hard. Don't give up. Do not quit. It's your responsibility to live every day. It is your responsibility to keep pushing forward every single day. All right. We are on chapter 2 of The Dream Giver. Are we ready? This is by Bruce Wilkinson, The Dream Giver. And remember, Ordinary now has his dream. Okay? However, now Ordinary is going to leave his comfort zone. Just like each and every one of you, you're living in your comfort zone. You're living in your safety net. You're living in the world of familiar. Yet we are ordinary. And we live amongst nobodies. The next morning, Ordinary woke up at the usual time, but instead of reporting to his usual job, he packed his suitcase with the usual stuff. Then he added his journal and a bottle of permanent ink. Just before he closed the latch, he carefully placed his long white feather inside. Soon, Ordinary was walking away from the comfortable center of Familiar, where almost every nobody lived. He was heading toward the border where almost no nobodies ever went. Ordinary had never dared to walk this way before, but like every nobody, he knew that the farther you walk from the center of Familiar, the less familiar things become. He also knew that most nobodies who tried to leave the comfort zone of Familiar became so uncomfortable they turned around and went home. Some were so glad to be back, they sat in their recliners for days, waiting for nothing to happen and sighing with relief. But Ordinary told himself he was different from most nobodies. He would pursue his dream no matter what. Brimming with anticipation, Ordinary whistled his new tune while he walked, and he dreamed about the great things he would accomplish. Life had never seemed so promising. Ordinary hadn't gone far, however, when he no longer felt like whistling. He couldn't say why, but he just wasn't in the mood anymore. Then as he walked farther, he began to feel edgy. The leaves on the trees looked leafy in a different way. Now when Ordinary thought about it, it looked different too. For the first time, he saw how pursuing it could cause him a lot of discomfort. He would have to do unfamiliar things in unfamiliar places, and he wouldn't have his box to watch. Then he had an even more disturbing thought. To do what he most loved, he would have to do what he most dreaded. To do what he most loved, he would have to do what he most dreaded. Ordinary's mood quickly went from edgy to anxious. His steps began to slow, and he began to have big doubts about his big dream. What had he been thinking? He didn't have enough talent or skill to succeed at his dream. He was clearly unable to accomplish great things. What if he failed right in front of the other nobodies? Worse, even if he could do the dream, he was clearly unworthy. Any nobody could see he didn't deserve to live his dream. He was just ordinary, after all. Maybe the dream giver had meant to give the dream to some other nobody more noble than him. By now, each step was harder to take than the last. His anxiety grew into fear. Then up ahead, he saw a sign. It read, "Leaving the comfort zone of Familiar, entering the borderland." Now Ordinary felt sheer terror. Sweat poured off his forehead. He could barely breathe. He could hardly think. Then, just as he came to the sign, Ordinary hit an invisible wall of fear. He stopped, unable to take one more step. He dropped his suitcase and sat on it. Should he turn around? He wondered. Or should he try to find a way to go on? Should he turn around, he wondered, or should he find a way to go on? What should I do? Time passed. Then he heard these words. "Why are you stopping?" Ordinary recognized the dream giver. I think I want to go back home, he said weakly. I'm not the right nobody to go after such a big dream. Yes, you are, said the dream giver. I made you to do this. But I don't think I can do this, he said. Yes, you can. And I will be with you. I will help you. Ordinary stayed where he was. He watched an unfamiliar bug crawl across the toe of his shoe. Strange birds flew by overhead. After a while, he stood and looked longingly toward the unknown. Somewhere out there was his big dream. But getting from here to there seemed way too hard. Then he looked longingly back towards Familiar. He fondly remembered all its comforts. His usual job, his best friend, his recliner, his TV. There was something wonderful about nothing happening. Ordinary picked up his suitcase and decided to take one step in that direction just to see what it felt like. It felt better. Right away, his breathing became easier. So he took another step just to see what that step would feel like. It felt even better. He went on with every step back toward the middle of familiar. Ordinary grew more comfortable, but he quickly noticed he was also growing sad again. And he knew why. With each step he took, he was leaving his big dream farther behind. Then he heard the dream giver again. "Why are you going back?" he asked. Ordinary stopped. "Because I'm afraid. Leaving familiar feels too scary and too risky," he said. "Yes, it does. But if I was supposed to do this big dream," he exclaimed, "then I'm sure I wouldn't feel so afraid." "Yes, you would," said the dream giver. "Every nobody does." Ordinary hung his head. He thought for a moment. "But you can't take away the fear. Please take the fear away," he begged. "If you don't, I can't go on." "Yes, you can," the dream giver said. "Take courage, Ordinary." And then he was gone. Ordinary saw his choice clearly now. He could either keep his comfort or his dream. But how do you take courage when you don't have any? Ordinary decided if his fear wasn't going to leave, he would have to go forward in spite of it. Still trembling, he picked up his suitcase, turned his back on familiar, and walked to the sign. And even though his fear kept growing, Ordinary shut his eyes and took a big step forward, right through the invisible wall of fear. And there he made a surprising discovery. On the other side of that single step, the exact one Ordinary didn't think he could take, he found that he had broken through his comfort zone. Now the wall of fear was behind him. He was free, and his dream was ahead. He began to whistle again as he walked on, his big dream beating brightly in his chest. Later that day, Ordinary took out his journal and his long white feather and wrote down the truth about his comfort zone. "It was hard to leave my comfort zone, but it would have been even harder to leave behind my dream, and I'm glad I didn't. I still don't feel worthy or able to do my dream, but the dream giver has promised to help me. Now I know a secret. I can take courage even when I feel afraid. My big dream, was the other side of that invisible wall of fear. I had to step through it. I didn't think I could, but I did." Now, in just a few minutes, we're going to read chapter 3. But we all get in that sometimes. We all have that feeling. We're trying to get something done, and there's this invisible wall, and we come up with excuse after excuse after excuse. We don't want to do something. We don't want to say something. We don't want to be somewhere. Because even though we know it's the right thing to do, or even though it's something that we've been calling to do, or something that we know we should do, we just can't do it because we can't get past that fear of the unknown, the fear of the unexpected. I know people, I live in Quincy, Illinois, and I know people that have never even crossed the Mississippi Bridge. We have 2 bridges in my hometown, and there are people in my hometown that are so scared, they've never even crossed the bridge to go into Missouri just to say they were in another state. It takes about less than a minute to cross the bridge in a car. A couple minutes if you're on a bike or by foot. But the whole point is people are so scared that they can't even cross that. People trying to get a new job, they're afraid to go. People that want a job, it's funny, they have nothing in their life, nothing to fear, nothing to lose, nothing to go forward for. And what's the first thing they do is they have every excuse in the world why they can't, why they shouldn't, why they couldn't. Why? Because they've never done it before, because they're afraid to write a resume. They're afraid to pick up an application. They're afraid to do the bare minimum in order to start building. I know businesses start you out at the beginning.
Jeffrey Jansen or +178.
We're going to take this call right now, and I'll talk to everybody in just a second. Good afternoon. This is Jeff with Jansen Solutions. How can I help you? Hola, ¿qué pasa? Tu Turbo? Do you speak English? English, por favor? Español. Dave? Llamo? ¿Qué llamo? What's your name? Okay, do you speak English? Okay. Do you have a legal situation that you're calling about? Are you calling about immigration? Okay. Where are you located? Florida? thought I turned that off. I'm sitting there reading on it. It's off. Why is that one on?